On today's episode of the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast, I'll be talking about bugs, pests, and all the creepy crawlies in London, Ontario with the godfather of bugs, Tom Budge from Bug Guys in London. He's going to fill our listeners in on all the heroic efforts he's doing right now to help homeowners with their pest issues in London. I think this is something that's going to be a very interesting episode because I do hear from a lot of people that are maybe looking at buying a property, what their concerns may be around pest issues or obviously homeowners and what they should be kind of looking out for. So, hey, Tom, welcome to the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Phil. That was a very generous intro. My name is Tom. I help run a company called thebugguys.ca right here in London, Ontario. The business itself has been in operation for 10 years now. We just celebrated 10 years last summer, and myself have been involved in the business for about 6 of those 10 years. I've been a pest control technician for 9. I never thought I'd be getting into an industry like this, but life works in funny ways, and here I am. I'm a father of 2 girls. I'm a husband to my lovely wife, Kelly, who you know, Phil. And I just sort of ended up here. I run this business with a bunch of my best friends, and we are having a great time helping people all over the city.
Awesome. Well, congrats on 10 years. That's a crazy business accomplishment. It's something that I think a lot of businesses don't make it to. So that's awesome. So, Tom, I think one of the initial questions I had is I get a lot of questions from my clients, homeowners in London, really about what they can do to protect themselves in their homes from pests. Obviously, curious, you're the secret agent here. Is there any top secret tips that you can share with the podcast listeners on what they can look for and things that they should be relying on you for as well?
Sure. I mean, there's really no top secret tips. A lot of it is knowledge and just knowing knowing what to look for, right? So part of my job, a lot of it is inspection and having those professional eyes where the average homeowner wouldn't necessarily know where to look. So when we're talking about things like rodents tend to be a big one, especially when buying a new home. When they go through the inspection, there may be some droppings up in the attic they may be concerned about, or in the basement. The things you want to look for is entry points. So you want to look for gaps around exterior plumbing or electrical. Maybe there's some cracks in the foundations or the brickwork. Those are the areas where you're going to see a lot of rodent activity and even insect activity entering the home. A lot of easy things that homeowners can do for themselves is to seal up those areas, or with some caulking or steel wool if it warrants that, or even full-blown repairs.
Nice. No, that's good. Thanks for sharing those top secret tips, Tom. I appreciate it. I am always curious about this. Obviously, I go into hundreds of homes every single year. Obviously, I had one not that long ago where we went down to the basement and there's just a dead mouse on the middle of the floor. So, things, it does happen. I don't know if it's the best omen for that sale. Maybe they should deal with that in advance, but sometimes, things happen. So I am curious, I'm not obviously in every single house in London, but I am curious about what are the top pests that you really see in London right now, and what's your recommendation with those pests that you're seeing? I know it's probably a very broad question, but I am kind of curious on that.
It is a broad question, and every situation is different for what we deal with. But I will say that anytime you have a high population of humans, you're going to get a high population of pests in terms of things like cockroaches, bed bugs, rats. They all tend to follow the human path, right? Because as humans, we're a much easier source for them for food, water, and shelter, rather than having them have those insects or pests try and find those out in the wild, right? So when you've got a big congregation of people in, let's say, like an apartment building, you're dealing with all sorts of different lifestyles, an abundance of trash, let's say, just in terms of the volume of people that produce it. So you're always going to have issues in larger populations like that with cockroaches, rats, bed bugs. To say that there's one particular thing that's worse than others, it's hard to say because it kind of ebbs and flows as nature takes its course throughout the city, throughout the year. In the summertime, we're dealing with a lot more wasps and ants activities, whereas in the fall and the winter, we're dealing with a lot more rodents trying to get into structures, rats and mice and things like that, even squirrels. So it is a very broad question to ask. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's one particular pest that's worse than others within the City of London, but it keeps me busy. I will say that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. There's a lot of calls I'm sure you're getting in certain things more than others over kind of the seasonal nature of things as well, right? And like what area of town you're in, and I've been into some condo buildings that obviously people don't live all the same way in terms of cleanliness and cleaning things up and garbage, and obviously I've seen a lot of the issues, and I know you've seen much more of them than I have, but I am kind of curious about I was always curious about that, like is there something that's getting worse in London, or is it same, has it been kind of similar over the last, say, decade, or is there different species that are kind of coming in more lately, or is it just pretty similar to what you've been dealing with for the last while?
Like I said, there's not really one particular pest that's gotten worse within the city. I will say during COVID, though, we did see a decrease in a lot of activity, especially downtown, mainly because, like I said, the people population aren't downtown anymore, right? Restaurants weren't operating the way they used to. Public spaces weren't operating the way they used to. So, without having a food source like that, downtown restaurants aren't putting out trash to the same degree that they would pre-COVID. So the population of rats, let's say, would have decreased or moved to a different area to find a food source, a better food source.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So Tom, one question I did have for you too is, how is Bug Guys different than other pest control companies that I've may have worked with in the past? I'm kind of curious about what do you focus on that kind of stands you apart and been able to kind of do it as long as you guys have been able to.
Sure. Well, one of the benefits of the Bug Guys is that we particularly focus on the customer and the situation at hand. That's one of the benefits of being a smaller local company, is that we have the time and the resources to dedicate to our customers. And not to say that other companies don't care for their customers, it's just that they usually have a higher volume of staff and work orders that they need to fulfill. So, I hate to say it, but if you're one of their customers, you may not be priority number one because they've got a long list of other things to get done that day. And there are certain quotas that need to be met with different companies. Again, I can't speak for every other company. But I know with us, communication and customer service is number one key, because without our customers, without our loyal clients, we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't have the success that we've had.
No, that's good. I think that's something kind of a theme of the podcast when I do interview people, is trying to find people that are definitely like local based and starting companies that are kind of in the area. Some of the Phil's favorite episodes were definitely the restaurants that you talk about that may not have been there for a little while during COVID, but I'm glad to see that those folks are back, and it's kind of cool to hear a story of a local company that's obviously doing well in London. So Tom, I know one of the things that I know we've met a few years ago now, but one of the ways that I knew about you was because of this cool event you have coming up in London, and just tell us about that event, because we'll definitely be getting this podcast recording out before the event happens. So I'm curious on telling us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, of course, you're talking about our annual event called Pestivus, and this is something that we developed about 5 years ago as a team. And it was just something to have a little fun, because summers are super crazy for the pest control industry, right? Everything's out and about. We work super hard. So we wanted to have something that we could celebrate our accomplishments as a company for the year, but also celebrate our clients and customers that help us got us there. So Pestivus is basically a giant party that we put on, sponsored by the Bug Guys. And this year we're having it once again at Fork River Brewing. a theme that seems to come up a lot in this podcast, which is great.
It does.
It's a great venue, great space, and we're happy to have them open their space to us again. It's going to be on August 26th between 5 and 10 p.m. It's an open house type scenario. Come in, have a drink, have some food from Kyle's, and we're going to have some live music. We're also going to be sort of showcasing a little more about what the Bug Guys do. We're going to have some products for sale, some domestic products that you can take home with you. We're going to have t-shirts for sale. First 75 people through the door are going to get a free pint glass with the Bug Guys logo on it. Yeah, so it's just a really fun time where we want to celebrate with our clients as a community, and we hope to continue doing this year after year because people really seem to enjoy it, and we enjoy putting it on.
That's awesome, Tom. Yeah, I definitely will be. I'll add that to the show notes as well, so if people see that they can kind of dig into the details there, and hopefully some people can join you that wouldn't have been there last year, right? So that's
all are welcome. It's great.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I definitely will be there as well. I've figured out my entire life for that night already, and I will be ready to drink with the Bug Guys and learn some more. So, Tom, just a couple parting questions I do always like to ask people is what's one of the biggest challenges for your line of work?
So honestly, the biggest challenge for us is dealing with people. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. And it's not that people can be difficult, but that the amount of information that's out there nowadays can be a little misguided, a little misunderstood. Similar to, I'm sure a lot of doctors have this problem too. You Google your symptoms, right? And then all of a sudden you think you're dealing with a much bigger problem than it actually is. It's kind of the same way in pest control, where we'll show up to a situation, maybe they're something simple as they think they're getting bit, okay? So then they'll go on the internet, do a quick search, and then all of a sudden they think their house is infested with bed bugs or fleas or something like this. And it's the most difficult part of my job is trying to re-educate people about what is actually happening, doing a thorough investigation of their home and trying to calm them down and make them understand the reality of the situation, right, from a professional point of view. Because unlike Google, I've had the training on this and I've got years of experience, much as do the rest of my team, right? So that's the most difficult part of my job. That and really time management. Pest control is not for everybody. You're dealing with a base amount of regular clients that you have to see on a regular basis, but then you're also dealing with emergency calls, calls that come in as one-times, wasp nests. My son's allergic. I need you to be here right now to take care of this nest, right? So every day is a little different. Time management and that dealing with that and also having a home life can be stressful and difficult sometimes, but if you do it right, it's worth it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think that's something that I've learned in my business that it sounds interesting, and I don't mean this as a negative thing, but a lot of the ways I do feel like I'm much more of like a therapist than I am a real estate agent. I think many times because I'm kind of chatting with people and kind of going through and be like, hey, it's okay, we're going to be fine. I've done this 47 times and you've done it in 1975 once. So, let's work together and I'll kind of give you the update on what's going on. And usually I think if you speak with people, in a respectful way and you kind of explain, hey, this is what I've seen, then obviously they usually will listen. Not every single person will, but most of my lovely clients have been awesome to me to kind of understood that over time, right? So, Tom, maybe give me an idea. Like if someone calls you, just say it's a homeowner, I'll just pick something like, I don't know, mice. Like they give you a call and they say, hey, I have a mouse problem in my house. What's your kind of course of action there?
Sure. Well, I would normally follow up with a few more questions so I can get a better idea or understanding of what they're dealing with and sort of their level of concern as well. So I'd say, well, have you seen an actual mouse? Are you just seeing droppings? Where are you seeing them? Have you just moved into your house? Have you been there for a while? What area of town is it in? All this information will sort of give me a better idea of sort of what I'm walking into right away. And then after that, I explain to them Sort of the programs that we offer, whether it be a one-time baiting program for mice, or we offer things that we can do monthly inspections and baitings, take care of you for the whole year. We can take care of your whole house, sort of the whole kit and caboodle, in terms of maybe you're just moved in and mice is the first thing you're seeing. Well, when I get there to do an inspection, I'm also noticing you've got some gaps up here. Maybe you've got an old wasp nest here. You've got some old foliage over here, which may be indicative of future pest problems, in which case I would advise them, we may want to take care of this now before it becomes a problem, right? So being proactive and preventative is a lot of what we do as well. But again, if I were to get that call about mice from a homeowner, it's giving them a little bit of information, talking them down, and setting them up with a schedule and saying, I can be there whenever I can be there.
Yeah. No, it's good. I think it's like every person's going to be kind of a little different. Every situation's going to be different. So I think that's interesting that you're kind of saying that in terms of like, looking at it from like when you're saying a doctor, it's like, well, you're kind of the expert on that. So let's, listen to the questions or listen to the answers, and then obviously come up with a plan that works best for that particular client.
You got to build that trust with your customers, right? And once you have that trust, I truly believe that you've got a client for life. And you do that through just talking with them as a person, as a fellow homeowner, as a human being, and that's how you set up yourself for success.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, Tom. Like you mentioned that a lot of the time they're almost, I have an infestation, everything's gone. I'm getting bit. It's horrible, right? Like obviously in that circumstance, you're doing, I think, the right thing by actually analyzing the issue and being, hey, this is actually what you need. It's probably maybe a lot of the times it's not as bad. Maybe sometimes it's far worse. But, and a lot of the times I think that's what kind of builds trust as someone running a business, right? Is that sometimes it's not always, the most expensive course of action possible, or it's something that's going to take us, 37 years to fix. It's something that, can be done relatively, I guess, less stressful than maybe that homeowner has Googled about. And I think that's why it's always good to kind of bring in the experts at the times when you need them. So I'm really glad to have an expert on the podcast today. Tom, I always ask this question because I know every single person that I've talked to, sometimes they'll have similar answers. Sometimes they'll just throw one completely out in left field and I'll learn something from them. So I do like to learn. And obviously we're called the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast because we're all based in the London area. So I'm curious do you have any suggestions of cool places that people listening to the podcast should be checking out in London? Maybe you can give me a top few list. You don't have to pick an absolute favorite here, Tom. I'm just looking for some nice suggestions. I hope no one gets offended when I name top few lists. It's not a top list. It's just a Phil's favorite list, and I'm curious on what your thoughts are, Tom.
Sure. So I've thought about this since we've been talking, and I knew you were going to ask me this, and I think the obvious answer is, once again, Forked River. We're both a little biased on that, but I really do believe that it has the best beer in the city, the best atmosphere, the best taproom staff, the best food. I honestly think it's great. I've been to every other brewery in town. The other breweries are good too, but nothing beats Forked River. But aside from that, I will give a shout out to the Holy Diver downtown. I think that's a great little spot. We've actually, last year, we did a little event there as well. And so that's a cool, hip, happening spot downtown. I want to give a shout out to Chelsea at BV Cleaning, who's another local independent business owner who does great work. And she's also celebrating her first full year in business. And then just recently, I've discovered this great bakery on Egerton called Nova Era. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Huge fan.
It's
huge
fantastic.
Fan.
It's fantastic. Their coffee's great. Their croissants are huge, and go check it out. So those are my recommendations for local places.
Nova Era that's a beautiful place, and you can actually sit in there. They have like table service now too, so you can go in the one side of it and just like I had coffee with another real estate agent there the other day, and it was amazing. Great coffee, but also amazing baked goods and food and everything. And it's funny because this is why I have people that are my friends already on the podcast that run businesses, is because Holy Diver, we were literally just chatting about that. Emily and I were literally just chatting about that yesterday. And we went there, I don't know, a couple months ago, and I had never been there before. And I was like, this is like the coolest place on earth. Like, it's just like the really neat atmosphere to be able to kind of go out and, have a drink and then also get some cool food and everything. And that's not to say that Fort River isn't also an amazing place to do all those things too. They're just very different. So that's funny you mentioned that, because like last night at like 9 o'clock, we were talking about that, and we were saying we got to get back to there. So I just have clients that are closing on a house today, and we were talking about we got to go celebrate. So I think I might have to take them there if they'll are willing to be a little punk rock with me.
Yeah,
it's definitely got a bit of that. Yeah, it's got a bit of that feel.
It's great. Yeah, it makes me feel young again, right?
It does. It makes me feel like I'm at like a way cooler version of Call the Office that I never like, because like we were talking about that on a previous episode about how Call the Office and like a lot of the music venues are not really there anymore, and it's a little sad. But apparently they were saying they have bands there too, which I thought was really it's a very small stage, and I was like, that's crazy, but that is also very punk rock of them to just kind of add all that in there.
Yeah, the folks at Holy Diver are doing a great job keeping punk rock alive here in this city, so kudos to them for that.
That's awesome. All right, Tom. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Any parting words? I guess one of the things I always like to mention is, how do people get a hold of you and your team if they have a question about pests in London?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, you can reach us through our website, thebugguys.ca. You can also reach us on the phone, 548-888-BUGS. Or you can send us an email, contact@thebugguys.ca. Either way, we'll answer your questions. Advice is always free, right? So give us a call. We'll try and talk you down off the ledge and help you out with any sort of pest issues that you're having.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure you check out Pestivus. I'm excited to be there as well this year, Tom. I think it's going to be a amazing event at Fort River. What was the date on Pestivus again?
That's August 26th. That's Saturday between 5 and 10 p.m.
Okay, perfect. That's at Fort River Brewing, which we do talk about a lot on this podcast, and I'm very excited to keep chatting about it. So thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate you letting me take this podcast on video today. Hopefully this turns out and it looks really beautiful when I can actually do a little bit of clipping from this one, because that's something that I hadn't really done before. I've always... I'm worried about my hair and my makeup, and it's something that I think I want to do more of. So I'm excited. And, just one note to everyone that's listening: if you have an idea for the podcast, or local idea usually, or something that you think would be interesting to talk about on the podcast, just send me a text. My number is 226-977-2348. If you want to learn a little bit more about me and real estate in London, buying, selling condos, homes, whatever you want to buy in the residential side, just go to my website. It's just philbailey.ca, or again, just text me 226-977-2348. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your time. I will chat with you soon, and see you at Pestivus.
See you.